We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
Johan Liebert is evil in its purest form, not driven by anger, greed, or revenge, but by a fundamental desire to prove that human life has no value, and that everyone is capable of becoming a monster given the right circumstances. He operates without leaving fingerprints, both literal and metaphorical, moving through society like a virus that corrupts everything it touches, while remaining completely untraceable. The contingency protocol must account for an enemy who possesses no superhuman abilities, but whose psychological manipulation skills can turn anyone into a weapon, whose very presence can drive people to suicide or murder without him ever lifting a finger. His greatest strength is his complete absence of normal human emotions or moral constraints, making him unpredictable to those who think in terms of conventional motivation, while remaining perfectly logical in his approach to destruction. Physical confrontation is meaningless because Johan rarely engages in direct violence, preferring to manipulate others into doing his killing for him, while he remains safely removed from the scene. He appears to be a normal, even beautiful young man whose physical capabilities don't exceed human limits, making him vulnerable to conventional weapons and restraint methods if they can be applied. However, his real defense isn't physical but psychological. His ability to read people instantly and say exactly the right words to either break their will or turn them to his purposes. Even trained professionals become compromised after prolonged exposure to his influence, making direct confrontation a losing proposition regardless of tactical advantages. The strategy requires understanding that fighting Johan means fighting the people he's corrupted rather than Johan himself, that his weapons are human minds and his battlefield is human weakness. Psychological profile reveals someone who has transcended normal human limitations through the complete absence of empathy, fear, guilt, or any other emotion that might constrain his actions. Johan doesn't kill because he enjoys it, or because it serves his interests. He kills to prove a philosophical point about the meaninglessness of existence and the ease with which people can be corrupted. His childhood trauma didn't create a broken person seeking healing, but rather stripped away every human quality that might have prevented him from becoming pure evil. The approach involves understanding that conventional psychology doesn't apply to someone who operates outside normal human emotional frameworks, that he can't be manipulated through fear, greed, or desire because he genuinely doesn't experience these emotions. Fighting Johan requires accepting that some people are fundamentally unreachable through any form of reasoning or manipulation. What do you think, Alfred?
Master Bruce, Johan Liebert represents perhaps the most disturbing case we could encounter. Someone who isn't insane, but rather perfectly sane while being completely evil. His lack of conventional motivation makes him terrifying because there's nothing to appeal to, no hidden trauma to heal, no secret desire that might be redirected toward good. He's chosen evil not from pain or madness, but from philosophical conviction that life has no meaning. The most unsettling aspect is that he might be partially correct. His ability to corrupt seemingly good people suggests that the line between civilization and savagery is thinner than we'd like to believe. Perhaps the only defense against such pure evil is maintaining absolute moral clarity and refusing to engage with his arguments, no matter how compelling they might seem.
Alfred's right about the danger Johan represents, but wrong about the response. Moral clarity isn't enough against someone who can twist any principle into justification for evil and who views moral people as the most interesting targets for corruption. The strategy can't be philosophical. It has to be practical. Complete isolation from any human contact, immediate elimination when encountered, and absolute refusal to engage in conversation or negotiation. Johan's greatest weapon is his ability to talk, to plant seeds of doubt, to make evil seem reasonable. The only defense is treating him like a contagious disease that spreads through communication itself. Sometimes the most moral response to pure evil is ensuring it can never spread to others. What do you think, Robin?
Bruce, this guy is basically what happens when someone smart figures out that being completely selfish and cruel is easier than caring about other people, and then decides to prove that everyone else would make the same choice if they were honest about it. He's not some mysterious force of evil. He's just a really intelligent sociopath who's gotten good at manipulating people by telling them what they don't want to hear about themselves. The scary part isn't that he's some special kind of monster, it's that he's probably right that most people have the capacity for evil if you push the right buttons. but that doesn't mean we should give up on people or stop trying to be better.
Robin's insight cuts to the heart of Johan's methodology. He's not supernatural, but rather someone who has mastered the art of exploiting human weakness through uncomfortable truths about human nature. The defense strategy must focus on protecting people from exposure to his influence, rather than trying to defeat him through direct confrontation, recognizing that his greatest power lies in making people complicit in their own corruption. This involves establishing strict communication protocols that prevent him from speaking to potential victims, creating isolation procedures that cut off his access to human targets, and developing rapid response systems that can eliminate him before he has time to work his psychological manipulation. The goal is treating him like a psychological plague that spreads through conversation, requiring quarantine rather than cure. Information warfare becomes critical because Johan's influence spreads through networks of people he's corrupted, making it necessary to identify and isolate his agents before they can carry out his wishes. His manipulation techniques create sleeper agents, who may not even realize they're working for him, people who've been programmed with specific triggers that will activate under certain conditions. The strategy involves comprehensive background investigations of anyone who's had contact with him, psychological evaluation systems that can detect signs of his influence, and communication monitoring that can identify the spread of his philosophical poison through social networks. This includes developing profiles of his typical manipulation techniques, creating early warning systems that can detect when someone is being turned, and establishing intervention protocols that can break his psychological programming before it leads to violence. Elimination protocols must account for the fact that killing Johan doesn't necessarily end his threat, as his influence can persist in the people he's corrupted long after his death. The strategy requires not just terminating him, but also identifying and neutralizing everyone he's influenced, a process that could take years and might never be completely successful. His death must be immediate and without opportunity for final words, as even his dying moments could be used to plant psychological seeds in witnesses. This includes using methods that prevent him from speaking, ensuring that his body is disposed of without ceremony or publicity that might inspire followers, and maintaining absolute secrecy about the circumstances of his death to prevent him from becoming a martyr or symbol. The goal is making him disappear so completely that his existence becomes questionable rather than legendary. Containment alternatives focus on permanent isolation that prevents him from having any contact with other human beings, while acknowledging that such isolation might be impossible to maintain indefinitely. The facility would need to be completely automated to prevent human guards from falling under his influence, with all communication conducted through written messages that can be screened for manipulative content. His cell would require complete sensory isolation to prevent him from gathering information about his captors that could be used for psychological manipulation, while his basic needs would be met through mechanical systems that don't require human intervention. The containment must account for the possibility that he might find ways to influence maintenance staff, delivery personnel, or anyone else who might have indirect contact with his environment. The final assessment acknowledges that Johan Liebert represents the ultimate test of whether pure evil can be contained, or whether it inevitably spreads to corrupt everything it touches. His existence challenges fundamental assumptions about human nature, rehabilitation, and the possibility of redemption, forcing recognition that some individuals may be beyond any form of help or reform. The contingency protocols serve as both practical response and philosophical statement that some forms of evil are so pure and concentrated that they can only be isolated or eliminated, never reformed or redirected. The plans acknowledge that victory against Johan means more than stopping his immediate actions. It means preventing his philosophy from taking root in others, proving that civilization can survive even when confronted with someone who embodies its complete opposite. Because in the end, the greatest defeat of pure evil isn't converting it to good, but ensuring it dies alone and forgotten, that its influence ends with its existence, that the darkness it represents never spreads beyond the person who chose to embrace it completely.